If you're sitting in your Cambridge IGCSE Computer Science 0478 exam and you write down HTML is used to make web pages, you are actively throwing away easy marks and putting your grade boundaries at serious risk. In this explainer, we're cutting out all the fluff. We're getting straight into the exact high-mark exam strategy you need to stop bleeding points on HTML questions. By the end of this session, you're going to know exactly how to diagnose the specific demand of a question and deliver the context-anchored answers your examiners are actually begging to see. Let's expose the most painful learner mistake in the entire 0478 syllabus. Imagine writing down that generic response we just talked about. HTML is used to make web pages. Now, technically speaking, that isn't wrong. It feels correct in your head. But then you get your paper back and see the marks awarded. 1 out of 4. Just 1. So why does that happen? Well, because in IGCSE-style computer science, examiners absolutely do not award the highest marks for short, isolated labels. They demand precise terminology. If you just state a generic fact without anchoring it to the specific details provided in the exam prompt, you're going to hit a massive ceiling. A response that feels totally right to you will completely fail to score full marks simply because it lacks specific context. Okay, so let's dive into exactly how we fix this. The entire foundation of our strategy relies on a technique we call concept compression. This means we don't just mindlessly memorize what the acronym HTML stands for. Instead, we step back and define the exact digital problem that HTML actually solves. We have to ask ourselves, what specific data or device is involved here? What actual process is taking place behind the scenes? And crucially, this is the big one, what is the practical consequence for a user, a system, or an organization? When you compress a concept this way, answering these functional questions first, the terminology suddenly becomes meaningful. You aren't just memorizing dictionary definitions in complete isolation, you're truly understanding the utility of the tool. And trust me, that is exactly what the examiner is trying to test you on. Now, this perfectly illustrates why ordinary passive revision completely fails. Dense theoretical foundations require you to actively distinguish between nearby concepts. It is painfully common to see learners totally confuse memory with storage, a protocol with a service, or a compiler with an interpreter. If you're just passively reading your notes, you aren't training your brain to spot these crucial differences. And let me tell you, the examiners definitely know how to bait these traps. To avoid these classic computer science mistakes, your revision has to train comparison just as much as it trains single-topic explanation. If you know what HTML is, you also absolutely need to know what it is not, and exactly why you wouldn't use an alternative method in a given scenario. So let's get you your first quick win. We call this the disciplined path. It's the technical methodology for tackling any HTML question, and it follows 4 exact steps. First up, identify the exact requirement of the task. Are they asking you for an advantage, a design decision, or an evaluation? Second, classify the relevant data, hardware, or software. Third, explain how the process works in a clear, logical sequence that another learner could actually follow. And fourth, always connect your explanation back to the context. This is the exact discipline sequence examiners are waiting for when they diagnose the demand of a question. Now, in just a moment, I'm going to show you the exact examiner clue that changes a failing answer completely into a top-band response. But first, you need the memory framework that makes that specific clue incredibly obvious. Because if you don't master this upcoming core framework, I guarantee that missing context clue will slip right past you in the exam hall. All right, here is the framework that changes everything. It brilliantly illustrates exactly how top-tier students revise. It's called the 4-prompt memory structure. Whenever you sit down to study HTML basics and web page structure, you must force the information through these 4 prompts. Prompt 1, what is it? Prompt 2, how does it work? Prompt 3, where is it used? And prompt 4, why is it better or worse than an alternative in that specific situation? If you can answer those 4 prompts aloud without looking at your notes, your topic is exam ready. This completely shifts you away from generic rote memorization and forces you into context-driven application. You stop just listing random facts and you actually start justifying choices. Let's put you directly in the examiner's seat for a second. Imagine you're facing this classic Cambridge-style application question. Explain the use of HTML structure for a new school robotics system website. Notice they aren't just asking what is HTML. They are specifically putting it inside a school robotics context. You have to actively apply our new framework here. Think about that disciplined path we just discussed. How would you actually connect the technical process of structuring a web page specifically to a robotic system? Let's play a quick game of Spot the Error. Imagine a student writes this exact sentence. The school uses HTML tags to display text on the monitor. I want you to pause and think for a second. What is fundamentally missing from this typical flawed student answer? Have they identified the task requirement? Barely. Have they anchored it to the context? Absolutely not. Text on a monitor could apply to literally any computer system in the world. They have completely ignored the robotic system element of the scenario. This right here is exactly how students who actually know the theory end up losing half their marks. Now, let's contrast that flawed answer with a flawless, top-band response. A perfect answer should look a lot more like this. HTML tags are used to provide the structural foundation and semantic meaning for the new school robotics website, separating the content such as robot schematics and club competition dates from the presentation formatting. Boom. Notice how this uses precise terminology like semantic meaning and structural foundation? More importantly, it explicitly anchors the explanation directly to the robotic scenario by actually mentioning robot schematics. That is context-anchored application in action, and that is what gets you full marks. To guarantee you can perform this exact kind of knowledge transfer under intense exam pressure, you need to use the 3-pass revision cycle. Pass 1 is simple. Secure your key definitions and contrasts. Pass 2, rehearse worked explanations exactly like the HTML tags example we just went through. But Pass 3 is where the real magic happens. This is where you adapt the scenarios, you change the robotics website to an embedded system, then to a security incident, or maybe a retail database. And you force yourself to justify your choices for that brand new scenario. Real-world transfer matters because Cambridge questions constantly combine base theory with applied reasoning. As you practice this, you've got to be hyper-aware of the classic wrong turns. We're talking vague wording, confusing similar terms, missing crucial process steps, and completely ignoring the scenario context. The absolute most lethal mistake you can make is naming a device or giving an advantage without explaining the how and the why. If you say something like, HTML is good because it's widely supported, but you don't explain why that wide support actually matters for the specific scenario provided in the question, you will always cost yourself marks. Good notes might teach you the correct pathway, but great revision teaches you to spot your own wrong turns long before the examiner ever gets the chance to. So before you move on to the next question in your exam, I want you to mentally run through this highly actionable pre-submission checklist. Ask yourself, did I identify the exact requirement? Is my terminology precise, or am I being way too generic? Is my answer firmly anchored to the specific context of the question? And finally, did I clearly explain the process sequence? Listen, if you can confidently check off these 4 boxes, you have locked in your marks. I'm going to leave you with this provocative question. Are you just recognizing HTML tags, or can you actually justify their application in any digital scenario? Because simply recognizing facts gets you 1 out of 4 marks. Justifying applications gets you full marks. Now, this explainer has completely solved the problem of losing marks on HTML scenario questions. You now know exactly how to structure your answers. But what happens if you open your exam paper and the very next question is a brutal 6-mark logical reasoning trap on security incidents? This HTML strategy solves your depth problem, but you still have a massive breadth problem across the entire syllabus. You need to know how all of these concepts connect together. That is exactly why your mandatory next step right now is to watch our Computer Science 0478 Last 7 Days Revision Map Explainer. It's the only way to ensure your entire syllabus knowledge is as secure as your HTML strategy. Subscribe to our YouTube channel Ace the Exams at acetheexams_HSC to excel in your Cambridge examinations. Let's get to work.